I went to the yellow house on Miller's Ridge with a folder full of invoices and a number circled in red. $18,420. I expected a liar. I expected excuses. I expected her husband, Ryan Whitaker, to open the door with that crooked smile he used on everybody in Carter County when he wanted one more week, one more favor, one more chance. Instead, a woman opened the door with flour on her hands, fear in her eyes, and a little boy hiding behind her skirt. "Mr. Cole?" she asked. I glanced at the folder. "Grant Cole. I'm looking for Ryan Whitaker." Her face changed in a way I had seen too often in my line of work. Not surprise, not confusion. Something closer to shame, as if his name had knocked on the door before I did. "He isn't here," she said. "Do you know when he'll be back?" She looked past me toward the gravel road, then back at the boy.
No.
I had driven 40 minutes through cold rain to hear that one word. I should have handed her the notice, explained the deadline, and left. That was what my father would have done before he died and left me the small building supply company that Ryan had nearly bled dry. But the boy's fingers tightened around the woman's apron. "Mrs. Whitaker," I said, softer than I meant to, "your husband owes my company a serious amount of money. Lumber, copper pipe, 2 commercial stoves, and a charge account he had no right to reopen after we froze it." She swallowed. "How much?" I gave her the folder. She opened it with trembling hands. Her eyes moved down the page, slower and slower, until they stopped at the final number. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The boy whispered, "Mama." She closed the folder and pressed it against her chest like it could shield her from the whole world. "I don't have that," she said. "I don't even have 1/10 of that. I'm not here to scare you, but you're here to collect." I could not deny it. She looked down at her hands, still dusted with flour, and then toward the kitchen behind her. I caught the smell of bread cooling on a counter. The house was old but clean, the kind of clean that came from scrubbing harder than life had been kind. There was a patched sofa, a stack of schoolbooks, and a space on the wall where a family photo used to hang. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. "I can pay you another way." The rain tapped the porch roof between us. I stepped back. "Mrs. Whitaker, I don't know what Ryan told you about me, but I'm not that kind of man." Color rushed into her cheeks. "That's not what I meant." The boy hid his face. She lifted her chin, embarrassed but steady. "I can work. I can cook. I can clean. I can keep books. I used to run the kitchen at the Ridgeview Inn before it closed. If that debt is real, then let me pay with my hands until I can pay with money. Just don't take this house. Please." I had come prepared to be hard. I had practiced it in the truck, the way men practice courage when they are tired of being taken for fools. Ryan had smiled in my office, promised a remodel contract that never existed, and charged supplies under my father's old account number while I was still grieving. I wanted somebody to answer for it, but the person standing in front of me was not Ryan. She was 36, maybe 37, with tired brown eyes and a wedding ring that looked loose on her finger. She was trying not to cry in front of her child. And for reasons I did not understand yet, that made me angrier at Ryan than any unpaid invoice ever could. "What's your name?" I asked. "Claire. And your son?"
Eli.
"He's 8. I nodded to the boy.
Helai. Eni.
He did not answer, but he peeked at me through his hair. I looked at the folder again. Every number in it was true. Every signature on it looked like Ryan's. But there was one thing missing from all those invoices. Proof that Claire had known. "Mrs. Whitaker, I can't erase this debt today." Her shoulders sank. "But I can hold off filing for 30 days while I figure out what Ryan actually did." She blinked. "Why would you do that?" I should have said because it was fair. I should have said because I needed more documentation. Instead, I told the truth. "Because you looked me in the eye." That was the first time I saw Claire Whitaker almost smile. It did not last long. A truck came over the hill behind me, fast enough to throw gravel. Claire's face drained of color. She grabbed Eli and pulled him behind her. The truck stopped at the end of the drive. Ryan Whitaker got out wearing a leather jacket I recognized from a photo on his old contractor website. He looked leaner than before, with a week of beard and the nervous confidence of a man who thought charm could still buy him time. "Well," he called, spreading his arms, "if it isn't Grant Cole, king of unpaid lumber." Claire whispered, "Go inside, Eli." The boy obeyed. Ryan climbed the porch steps and kissed the air near his wife's cheek. She did not move toward him. "You got my message?" I asked. "I got a lot of messages." He leaned against the railing. "Most of them from people who can't wait. You reopened an account under my father's terms after I closed it. Your father trusted me. My father is dead." For a second, the grin slipped. Then it came back worse than before. "Sorry about that, truly. But business is business. You know how cash flow gets." Claire stared at him. "Ryan, did you spend $18,000 on materials?" He clicked his tongue. "Claire, honey, grown folks are talking." Something in my chest went cold. She straightened. "I'm asking because this man came to my door with papers saying you put our house at risk." "Our house?" Ryan laughed, short and mean. "Last I checked, my name is on the deed." I saw Claire flinch. "Not much, just enough." Ryan turned to me. "Give me 2 weeks. You said that 6 weeks ago. Then give me 1. I want the supplies or the money. You'll get both when my job pays." "What job?" He looked toward the road. "A private one." I opened the folder and showed him the invoice for the commercial stoves. "You told my office these were for the church fellowship hall. Pastor Glenn says they never ordered stoves." Ryan's mouth tightened. Claire looked from him to the paper. "The church." He snatched the invoice from my hand, then shoved it back. "You checking up on me now?" "Yes." He stepped closer. "Careful." Claire moved between us. "Ryan, stop." He looked at her as if he had forgotten she was there, then gave her that smile. "See what you did? You got a stranger thinking he can come here and talk to me like that." "I didn't do anything," she said. He lowered his voice. "You never do." I had spent 15 years collecting debts from men who lied for a living. I knew when a man was performing. Ryan's anger was not for me. It was for her. I was only the audience. "I'll be back Friday," I said, "with updated paperwork. If you have payment, bring it to my office before then." Ryan laughed. "Or what? Or I stop asking nicely." I turned to leave, but Claire followed me down the steps. "Mr. Cole," she said. Ryan watched from the porch. Claire kept her voice low. "I meant what I said. About working. You don't owe me your labor for his lies. I owe my son a roof." There it was. Not romance. Not softness. Survival. I looked past her at Ryan, who had already taken out his phone and turned his back like none of this concerned him. "Come by Cole Supply tomorrow at 9, I said. "We'll talk about something temporary." Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears away. "Thank you." Claire arrived the next morning at 8:40, wearing a navy dress, a gray cardigan, and shoes polished so carefully they almost hid how worn the soles were. Eli sat in the back of her old station wagon with a backpack on his knees. She walked into my office with a folder of her own. "I brought references," she said before I could say hello. "Ridgeview Inn, the Methodist Church kitchen, and 2 private catering jobs. I also brought my tax records from the year I worked full-time." I looked at the papers. "You didn't have to prove you're respectable. I know what people think when a woman says she'll pay another way." Her voice was steady, but her eyes were not. "I'm sorry I misunderstood you. You weren't wrong to be careful." The honesty of that answer sat between us. My office was small, with old pegboard walls, a coffee pot that burned everything, and my father's chair still behind the desk because I had never been able to replace it. Outside the glass window, my brother's boy, Mason, loaded drywall into a customer's pickup. "What kind of work do you need?" Claire asked. "Not enough to cover $18,000. I'm not asking for charity. I'm not offering it." She studied me, waiting. I took a breath. My father kept this business alive with a pencil, a handshake, and a memory like a courthouse archive. I inherited the pencil. The rest is a mess. I'm behind on invoices, supplier calls, payroll taxes, and the cafe we own next door is losing money because I can't find a reliable kitchen manager. You own Miller's Cafe? My mother did. After she passed, Dad kept it open because he said the town needed a place to sit down together. Now it's bleeding money. Claire glanced through the window toward the little brick cafe with the green awning. Your breakfast cook is burning bacon every morning. I almost smiled. You've eaten there? Once. I couldn't afford to make the same mistake twice. That was the second time I almost smiled. What would you do first? I asked. At the cafe? Yes. She did not hesitate. Cut the menu in half, stop buying frozen pie, train one server to upsell coffee refills and soup, post lunch specials where people can see them from the road, and throw away whatever you call that gravy. I leaned back. She flushed.
Sorry. No.
Keep going. For the supply business, I'd separate your old accounts from current accounts, flag anything opened under your father's name after his death, and call every customer Ryan claimed to be buying for. If he lied about one church order, he lied about more. I looked at the folder on my desk. You know how to do that? I learned books at the inn because the owner trusted his nephew and the nephew trusted whiskey. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. I can pay you $12 an hour on paper, I said. Anything over that I'll credit toward the disputed debt until we know what is actually yours to worry about. She nodded. And Claire. She looked up. You work here because you're qualified, not because Ryan cornered you. Her mouth trembled. She pressed it into a line and nodded again. That was how Claire Whitaker began paying me another way. By Friday, the cafe smelled like real biscuits for the first time since my mother died. Men who usually complained about prices started ordering second plates. Mrs. Bell from the pharmacy asked who made the chicken dumpling soup and then bought 2 quarts to take home. Mason stopped burning bacon because Claire told him, in a voice too gentle to be called scolding, that if he respected the pig, he should respect the pan. I watched all of it from the supply counter, pretending to sort invoices. She moved through work like a woman rebuilding a room after a storm. Quiet, focused, never wasting a step. But every time the front bell rang too hard, her shoulders tightened. Every time a truck slowed near the curb, she checked the window. Ryan did not come Friday. He did not bring money. He did not answer my calls. What he did do was send Claire a text at 11:13 a.m. while she was writing the lunch special in chalk on the board. I saw her face when she read it. She set the chalk down carefully. Too carefully. Everything all right? I asked. Yes. That was a lie, but not the kind people tell to deceive. It was the kind they tell because they are trying not to fall apart in public. At closing, I found her in the back office with Ryan's invoices spread across the desk. She had separated them into 3 piles, each labeled in neat handwriting. Verified, she said, pointing to the smallest stack. Questionable. And impossible.
Impossible.
She handed me a paper. This order says Ryan picked up $2,000 worth of copper pipe on March 8th. Yes. March 8th was the day Eli had his appendix removed. Ryan was in Nashville. I have the hospital visitor pass. He signed in at 8:10 that morning and signed out after midnight. I stared at the invoice. Someone else picked it up under his account. Or someone signed his name. I looked through the other papers. Claire, there are 5 impossible orders. 6, she said. 1 is under my name. My head came up. She pulled out an invoice I had never noticed because it was smaller than the rest. $486.
Paint, Inge, Cabinet Pull.
Customer signature, Claire Whitaker. That isn't my signature, she said. I studied it. You're sure? She took a receipt from her purse, one from the school cafeteria account where she volunteered, and placed it beside the invoice. The difference was obvious. I never bought these. Cold anger spread through me. Ryan forged your name. I think he has been using everyone's name. She folded her hands so tightly her knuckles whitened. Including yours.
Mine?
She pulled one more paper from the stack. It was not an invoice. It was a copy of a supplier authorization form, one that had supposedly allowed Ryan to charge materials through a second vendor using coal supply as guarantor. At the bottom was my signature, only I had never signed it. For a moment, the room went very quiet. My father's photo hung on the wall beside the file cabinet. He was smiling in it, one hand on my shoulder, the other holding the keys to the business he had trusted me to protect. I felt like that dead man was watching me discover I had been robbed in my own house. "Where did you find this?" I asked. "In Ryan's desk drawer last night." "You went through his desk?" "He told me the deed was only in his name. I needed to know if that was true." "Is it?" She shook her head. "The house was my grandmother's. My name is still there." He lied. Relief moved through me so fast I had to look away. Claire noticed. "Why does that matter to you?" "Because yesterday I thought I might have to become the man who took your home." She looked at me for a long second. Then she said, "I don't think you were ever that man." I wanted to believe her, but wanting a thing did not make it true. We took the forged form to Sheriff Danvers the next morning. He was a broad man with a tired face and the political instincts of someone who had been re-elected too many times. He listened, took copies, and said, "This sounds like a civil matter." Forgery was not civil. Fraud was not civil. Theft was not civil. But Ryan played poker with half the county and owed the other half money, which meant everyone had a reason to avoid looking too closely. Outside the courthouse, Claire stood under a bare maple tree with her arms wrapped around herself. "He won't do anything," she said. "Not yet." "What does that mean?" "It means we build a file so heavy, he can't pretend not to carry it." For the next 10 days, Claire and I did exactly that. At work, she ran the cafe like she had been born behind that counter. At night, after Eli went to sleep at her aunt's house or on the little cot in my office, we compared invoices, called churches, contractors, restaurants, and property managers Ryan had named. We found 2 fake purchase orders, 3 forged signatures, and 1 storage unit rented under a cousin's name where several missing appliances had been kept before being sold for cash. We did not talk about what was happening between us. Maybe because nothing was happening, not in the way gossip would have understood. I never touched her except to hand her papers, move a chair, or catch a box before it fell. She never leaned too close. She still wore her wedding ring, though sometimes I saw her thumb rubbing the loose band like it was a shackle she could not unlock yet. But something was changing. It was in the way she started leaving a cup of coffee on my desk before I asked. It was in the way I learned Eli liked grilled cheese cut diagonally and hated being called Buddy. It was in the way Claire laughed the first time Mason spilled flour on his boots and looked like he had walked through a ghost. Her laugh caught me off guard. It was not loud. It was not careless. It was rusty, like a gate opening after years of weather. But it changed the room. I carried that sound home with me. One evening, I found Eli asleep in the cafe booth after closing, his cheek pressed against a math worksheet. Claire stood beside the window watching the street. "Ryan called," she said. I set down the deposit bag. "What did he want?" "He said if I keep helping you, he'll tell everyone I threw myself at you to get out of debt." My jaw tightened. People who know you won't believe that. People who don't know me might enjoy it. I had no answer because she was right. She looked at her sleeping son. "I hate that a lie can travel faster than proof." "Then we don't chase the lie," I said. "We put the proof where it can't be ignored." "How?" "There's a county business breakfast next Thursday. Contractors, church board members, bank folks, the sheriff, everyone Ryan likes to perform for. I'm supposed to speak about small business recovery." She turned slowly. "You want to expose him in public. I want to ask for information about fraudulent charges without saying your name. That will make him angry." "He's already angry. With you, maybe. But I have to go home." The words hit harder than she meant them to. Home. To that yellow house. To the man who thought fear was a form of ownership. "You and Eli could stay somewhere else," I said. "I won't run out of my grandmother's house because Ryan lied well." There was pride in her voice and pain under it. I nodded. "Then we do it your way." What's my way? You tell me. She looked at the folder on the counter, then at her son, then at the street where Ryan's truck could appear any minute. My way is quiet until it has to be loud, she said. So we stayed quiet. I was so stupid, she whispered one night, after another bank record proved Ryan had been spending money while telling her there was none.
No.
I defended him to people. I made excuses. I thought if I was patient enough, decent enough, forgiving enough, he'd come back to himself. You believed in the man he pretended to be. That isn't stupidity. She looked at me. What is it? Hope. Her eyes filled then. I did not move toward her. I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to. But she was still married, still frightened, still standing in the ruins of a life someone else had built around her. My wanting had no right to become another weight on her shoulders. So I handed her a napkin. She laughed through one tear. That's your comfort? A napkin? It's a clean napkin. That laugh returned, broken but real. You're a strange man, Grant Cole. I've heard worse. I haven't. For the first time, the silence between us felt almost gentle. The business breakfast happened on a Thursday morning in the back room of Miller's Cafe. Claire made ham biscuits, cinnamon rolls, and coffee strong enough to make the bankers sweat. She planned to stay in the kitchen. I planned to speak carefully, present the forged documents without drama, and ask anyone who had received questionable materials from Ryan Whitaker to contact my office. Plans have a way of embarrassing honest people. Ryan walked in at 8:17 wearing a clean shirt, a big smile, and Tessa Lane on his arm. Claire froze beside the kitchen door. I saw the whole room notice, not all at once but in small turns of the head. Pastor Glenn, Sheriff Danvers, the bank manager, Mason, Mrs. Bell. Every person understood enough to want more. Ryan clapped his hands. Hope I'm not late. Heard my good name might be discussed. Tessa looked bored, chewing gum beneath a red lipstick smile. Around her neck was the diamond necklace from the bank record. Claire stepped back into the kitchen, but Ryan saw her. Well, there she is, he said. My wife, working off my debts with another man. The room went silent. My hands curled around the podium. Claire closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, something in her had changed. Not hardened, cleared. She walked out of the kitchen wiping her hands on a towel. Ryan, she said, don't do this. He grinned. Do what? Tell the truth. No, she said. Force me to. That was the moment I stopped worrying Claire would break. Ryan laughed, but it sounded thin. Claire turned to the room. My husband owes Grant Cole's company money. I didn't know how much until Mr. Cole came to my door. I offered to work because I thought that was the honorable thing to do. Since then, we found invoices that don't match the jobs Ryan claimed, signatures that were forged, and materials that were sold for cash. Ryan's face darkened. You better watch your mouth. She looked at him. I watched it for 12 years. No one moved. She reached into the folder I had left on the counter and pulled out the forged invoice with her name. Her hands were steady. This is not my signature, she said. This is not Grant's signature. The church did not order those stoves. The Ridgeview property manager did not order that copper. And that necklace, she looked at Tessa, was purchased 3 days after my son cried in a dentist chair because Ryan said we couldn't afford treatment. Tessa's gum stopped moving. Sheriff Danvers stood. Claire, maybe we should take this into my office. I stepped forward. You had copies for 10 days. Several heads turned toward the sheriff. Ryan pointed at me. This is harassment. He wants my wife, and she's letting him play hero. There it was, the ugly lie Claire had feared. Heat rose in my face, but Claire spoke before I could. Grant has never dishonored me, she said. Not once. You did that all by yourself. The room shifted. I felt it. A lie can move fast, but truth has weight when it finally arrives. Ryan grabbed Claire's wrist. It happened quickly. 1 second he was reaching. The next, I was between them, my hand locked around his forearm. Let go, I said. He smiled at me, close enough for only me to hear. You think she's worth this? I looked at Claire. She was not crying. She was not hiding. She was standing with her head high, her wrist already slipping from his grip. Yes, I said, but that's not why. I released him only when Sheriff Danvers came around the table and took Ryan by the arm. For once, I told the sheriff, do your job before everyone here becomes a witness to you refusing. Maybe it was the room. Maybe it was the paperwork. Maybe it was the fact that Pastor Glenn had pulled out his phone and was recording. Whatever the reason, Danvers finally moved. He asked Ryan to step outside. Ryan refused. Then he cursed. Then Tessa started crying about not knowing anything. Then the bank manager quietly asked me for copies of the supplier authorization form. Claire sat alone in the cafe booth where Eli usually did homework, staring at her bare left hand. I noticed the ring was gone. You don't have to work tonight, I said. She turned the ring in her fingers. I took it off in the bathroom. I thought it would feel dramatic. How does it feel? Like my finger can breathe. I sat across from her, leaving space between us. She placed the ring on the table. I don't know who I am without being sorry for him. You don't have to know tonight. I'm scared I'll become bitter. You won't. How can you know? Bitter people don't worry about becoming bitter. She gave a small smile, then wiped it away with her hand. I owe you an apology, she said. For what? For bringing trouble to your door. I looked around the cafe. The tables were clean, the kitchen smelled like cinnamon and soup, and the cash drawer had more money than it had held on any Thursday since my mother died. You brought biscuits, I said. Trouble came separately. She laughed, then covered her face. The laugh became a sob. I stayed where I was. When she reached across the table, I gave her my hand. Her fingers were cold. We sat like that until she let go. Claire's divorce attorney filed an emergency petition. The judge ordered Ryan to stay away from the house and from the cafe. The court also confirmed what Claire had already found. The yellow house belonged to her family trust, not Ryan. For the first time since I had met her, she slept without a chair pushed under the doorknob. She told me that 2 weeks later while she was making peach cobbler for the lunch crowd, as if it were a small thing. It isn't small, I said. She did not look up from slicing peaches. I know. Eli changed too. Slowly. He stopped flinching when trucks pulled in. He started helping Mason stack napkins, then announced he wanted to become a cafe engineer, which seemed to mean someone who fixed wobbly tables and received pie. The debt changed shape. Once the forged orders were separated, Ryan's real debt to coal supply was $6,230. The rest became evidence in a criminal case, insurance claim, and supplier dispute. Claire insisted on continuing to work off the verified amount. You don't have to, I told her. Yes, I do. Why? Because I said I would. And because I don't want the first honest promise I make after Ryan to be one I break. How do you argue with that? So I did not. Spring came to Carter County with wet roads, dogwood blossoms, and gossip that finally turned kinder because people prefer a redemption story after they finish enjoying a scandal. Miller's Cafe became busy enough that I hired 2 part-time servers. Claire added Thursday pot roast, Saturday pie boxes, and a small shelf of frozen take-home meals for widowers who would otherwise live on canned soup. I pretended not to know she started that shelf because of me. One evening after closing, I found her standing in the alley behind the cafe, looking at the sunset over the roof of coal supply. She wore a white apron over a blue dress, her hair pinned up messily, one loose strand touching her cheek. Eli's with my aunt, she said. Mason locked the front. Are you telling me we're alone? She looked at me, amused. Are you afraid? Yes. Her smile faded into something softer. I leaned against the brick wall, keeping distance. Claire, I need to say something before this silence between us turns into a habit we both pretend not to understand. She folded her arms, not defensive, just holding herself still. I care about you, I said, more than I have any right to while your life is still being untangled. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not waiting like a man tapping his watch. I just don't want my kindness to feel like a debt you owe. She looked away, and I thought I had ruined everything. Then she whispered, "Do you know why I kept working after the debt became smaller? Because you made a promise. That was part of it. What was the other part?" She looked back at me. "Because this is the first place in years where I felt useful without being used." The words went through me slowly. "And because of you," she added. The alley seemed to hold its breath. I did not move. "Claire." "I know," she said. "I'm still married. The papers aren't final. Eli comes first. Healing takes time. I know all the reasons we have to be careful." I nodded. "But careful doesn't mean pretending," she said. "And I am tired of pretending." She reached for my hand, not like the night she cried, but with a choice in every inch of the motion. I took it. That was all. 2 hands in an alley at sunset. No music. No dramatic kiss. No promise beyond the one we could honestly keep. We would not turn something good into another escape route. Her divorce became final in July. On the morning of the hearing, she wore the same navy dress she had worn the first day she came to my office. But this time the seams had been repaired and the shoes were new. Eli stayed with her aunt. I drove her because she asked me to, and I waited in the hallway because she wanted to walk into the courtroom alone. Ryan looked smaller in a suit than he had on my porch. Men like him often do. Without the truck, the smile, the woman on his arm, and the fear around him, he was just a man with paperwork catching up to him. The judge granted the divorce, confirmed Claire's sole claim to the house, and ordered restitution to be handled through the criminal case. Ryan tried to speak to her afterward, but she walked past him. In the parking lot, she stopped beside my truck and breathed in like the air belonged to her. "It's over," I said. "No," she answered. "It's starting." Then she smiled, and this time she did not apologize for it. Love, when it came, did not rush us. It showed up in ordinary ways. Claire leaving notes on supplier invoices that said check the math. Not because I was careless, but because she had learned I trusted people too long. Me fixing the porch rail at her house because Eli said it wobbled and Claire said she could call someone. Eli asking if I could come to his school's pancake breakfast, then pretending he did not care when I showed up early with a tie on. Claire and me sitting on opposite ends of her porch after he fell asleep, talking about everything except the future until one night the future stopped sounding like a trap. The final payment on Ryan's verified debt came in a white envelope the week before Thanksgiving. Claire brought it to my office after closing. The cafe was empty except for the hum of the refrigerator and rain ticking against the windows, just like the day I first came to her porch. She placed the envelope on my desk. "What is this?" I asked, though I knew. "The last of it." I opened it. Cash, a receipt list, and a folded note showing every hour she had worked beyond her wages. The math was exact. "You kept records this whole time?" She raised an eyebrow. "You think I spent a year fixing your books and forgot how to count?" I smiled. "No, ma'am." She looked around the office. My father's photograph, the replaced file cabinets, the new computer system she had bullied me into buying, the calendar full of catering orders. "I suppose this means I'm free of you," she said. I stood. "Not if I can help it." Her eyes softened. I walked to the old safe in the corner and took out the first invoice, the one I had brought to her door with $18,000 circled in red. I placed it beside her envelope. "This is what I thought you owed me," I said. Then I took out a second paper, one I had written that morning. "And this is what I owe you." She frowned. "Grant, read it." She unfolded the paper. It was not a bill. It was an offer. Co-manager of Miller's Cafe with profit share, authority over kitchen operations, and an option to buy into the business over 5 years if she wanted it. Her eyes moved across the page. "I don't understand," she said. "Yes, you do. This is too much."
No.
Too much was asking you to carry shame for a debt you didn't make. This is business. Her mouth curved. "Business? Mostly." She looked at the paper again. "Why?" "Because you saved that cafe. Because my mother would have loved you. Because you turned a place I was keeping open out of guilt into a place people choose to come. And because I don't want you working here under the shadow of Ryan's debt one day longer." She pressed the paper to her chest the same way she had held my folder on her porch. Only this time she was not shielding herself. She was holding on to something. "I offered to pay you another way," she said softly. "You did. And I thought that meant labor. It did at first. What does it mean now?" I stepped closer, stopping where she could choose the rest. "It means you paid me back by reminding me what kind of man I wanted to be." Her eyes shone. "Grant Cole," she whispered. "That is a terrible business model." "I know." She laughed, and that laugh filled every empty corner of the office. Then she kissed me, not from fear, not from gratitude, not because she needed a roof, a witness, a ride, or protection from a man who had mistaken love for leverage. She kissed me because she wanted to, and because she could. A year later, the yellow house on Miller's Ridge had new shutters, a repaired porch, and Eli's bicycle lying in the grass like a sign of peace. Claire kept her grandmother's kitchen table but replaced the chair Ryan had broken. She planted rosemary by the steps and said every house needed something that came back after winter. Miller's Cafe got a new sign, Miller's Table. Under it, in smaller letters, it said breakfast, supper, and second chances. Claire said the wording was too sentimental. Then she cried the day we hung it. We married on a Sunday afternoon in the cafe, after the lunch crowd and before supper prep. Nothing fancy. Mason stood beside me. Eli walked Claire down the aisle because he insisted he was the man of the house temporarily. She wore a cream dress, simple and beautiful, and carried rosemary from her own porch. When the pastor asked who gave her away, Eli said, "Nobody. She's walking herself. I'm just making sure she gets there." Everyone laughed, including Claire. When she reached me, she took both my hands. "You came to collect a debt," she whispered. "I was wrong about what I was collecting." "What did you collect?" I looked at her, at Eli, at the people crowded between cafe tables, at my father's photograph tucked near the register and my mother's recipes framed on the wall. "A life," I said. Her eyes filled, but her smile held. After the vows, after the cake, after Eli danced with Mrs. Bell and Mason gave a speech that included too many jokes about burned bacon, Claire and I stood alone for 1 minute in the back alley where we had first held hands. The sun was going down behind Coal Supply. The bricks were warm. Her shoulder rested against mine. "Do you ever think about that first day?" she asked. "Every time it rains. I was so afraid of you." "I know. I thought you had come to take everything." I looked at our hands, wedding rings catching the last light. "I thought I had come to collect what I was owed. And I left owing you more than I could ever repay." She leaned her head against my arm. "That was the truth I wish I had understood years earlier. Not every debt is a chain. Some are bridges. Some are promises. Some are the quiet responsibility of loving someone without making them pay for the love they receive." Claire did pay me another way. She paid me with courage when I had settled for caution, with honesty when I had grown used to suspicion, with a home where duty and joy could sit at the same table, with a boy who eventually stopped calling me Mr. Cole, and one day, while fixing a wobbly chair at the cafe, looked up and called me Dad like the word had been waiting for permission. And if you ask me what happened to Ryan's debt, I can tell you the numbers. I can show you the receipts. I can point to the court records and the restitution checks and the account marked closed. But if you ask me what really got paid that year, it was something no invoice could hold. A lonely man learned that justice without mercy turns hard. A wounded woman learned that help without strings can still exist. And a house that once trembled every time a truck came up the road became a place where porch lights stayed on for welcome, not fear. So if you have ever mistaken survival for living, or if you have ever believed the damage someone left behind was yours to repay forever, remember Claire. Remember the woman who stood in a doorway with flour on her hands and fear in her eyes, then still found the courage to offer the only honest thing she had left, herself, not as a bargain, but as a promise to keep going. And remember this too. Sometimes the person who comes to collect the debt is not the one who takes everything from you. Sometimes, if life is kind in its strange and difficult way, he is the one who helps you discover you were never the debt at all.